Hey, welcome to Archaeoed Ask Ed number 2. This is connected to my podcast that was from season 3, episode 5, about Moises Morales. This time we've doubled our questions. Last time we had 3, this time we have 6. So great, we're growing. I've also learned a couple of things. Number 1, when you ask your question, please try to limit it to 2 or 3 sentences, maybe 4, so that I can stick them on a single slide that you can read while I'm addressing them. Number 2 is, if you do ask more than one question, I am going to pick my favorite of the questions you've asked and put that one on this Ask Ed segment, and maybe I will send you an email addressing the other ones, no promises. All right, well, I don't want to waste a lot of time, so let's get started with this. Okay, question number 1 is from Nancy Bond, and Nancy asks, in the spirit of those that influenced you in your work, I was wondering what other folks influenced your work. I've heard you speak particularly of Linda Sheely, and I'm interested in her work on shamanism. Okay, let's get to that one. Okay, Nancy, definitely Linda Sheely was a big influence on me. Sadly, she passed away in 1998, so it's been, 23 years now without her, 24 years. I think, in answer to your question, the one person who really comes to mind is my friend and colleague, Christopher Powell. Chris probably had a bigger influence on me than anyone. He had this incredible ideas about geometry and astronomy, and he really sucked me in. He's a magnetic personality and a brilliant individual. I think Chris really guided my path towards those subjects in mathematics more than any other colleague did. And on a personal level, Chris is just a really good guy. The truth of the matter is that when I was a younger man, I was fiery, I was easy to provoke. I was interested in reaping revenge on anybody who had offended my pride, and Christopher Powell is absolutely not like that, and he really taught me to be a better person, be a better colleague, let those sort of things roll off my shoulders, work with people, and not get offended when people tried to poke my pride. He really taught me a lot, not just about being a Mayanist and my approach and my specialties, but also just how to be a good person. So I'm picking Christopher Powell. Question number 2 is from Patty King, and Patty asks, I would love to hear more of Moises' stories. Did he actually ever tell you the one about cowboys? Are there any favorite tall tales of his you couldn't quite fit into the show? How did he go skinny dipping with Jackie Kennedy anyway? Well, all good questions, more than one, Patty, but let's get to them. Sadly, no, I never did hear the cowboy story. You and I and everyone will just have to wonder what that was. I'm sure it was great. Are there more stories? Yes, there are hundreds of stories. And, if you ever come on another trip with me, maybe you and I will talk about them over a beer. Now, Jackie Kennedy. How did he get skinny dipping with her? Well, this was one of those stories. You pointed out in further of your question that some of my stories sometimes sounded a little fantastic. I agree. Yes, Moy has influenced my storytelling. But like him, most of my stories are actually pretty true. And here's a picture of Jackie Kennedy at Palenque in 1967. The article was from 1968. I know it was 1967 because after Moises told me this story, which involved Jackie saying she wanted to go explore the jungle with Moises and telling the Secret Service to just back off, he ended up bringing her to this special pool that only he at the time knew about in 1967, and they got down into their underwear and they swam in this pool together. And I thought this was a pretty fantastic story until one day I was over at Moy's house and he was pulling out old books that were his old memory books of people he had given tours to and their notes to him. I was flipping through one and there was the thing from Jackie Kennedy. It was dated in 1967, and it said basically, Moy, I'll always remember our time and skinny dipping in the pool in the jungle in Palenque. You're a magical friend, and I'll remember you always. And I was like, Moy, this was really a true story. And he was just in his normal way. He didn't even say anything. He just went. And actually, as a final follow-up, I found that pool. Moy helped me find it. I put it on the map. And its name officially now in the Palenque map is Jackie's Pool. Okay, question number 3 is from William Tucker. And William asks, how do you and your colleagues view the White Sands footprints? Does it give more credence to controversial lower layers at Meadowcroft and Monteverde? Thanks again. I look forward to the first of every month. Thanks, William. And great question. Let's get to it. So, for those of you who might not know what the White Sands footprints are, they were recently published and yes, found several years ago. They date to 23,000 years ago in a very tight layer. It's a very, very solid date, and now we have 23,000. So William's asking, does that change our mind about some of the controversial earlier dates at very solid sites like Meadowcroft Rock Shelter in Pennsylvania or Monteverde in Chile? And, I can't speak for all of my colleagues, William, but it was a very, very solid date. To me personally, yes, I think it does ask the question. We should return to those sites now, look at it a little more, and just rethink the whole thing. You also did ask about haplogroup X, and, that one's another ball of wax. I'm not a DNA specialist. I doubt you are either. The X is from the male chromosome, which means that we can only get it out of live people. It's the Y chromosomes that we get out of mitochondrial DNA that we can do from older and older skeletons, at least as so I understand. So the fact that X is in Europe and in Canada, well, we can only take them out of live people. So I am not an expert again, but I do think that there's a confusion there. That movement of DNA across to Canada and upper United States might be more recent. It might just be a product of the first Europeans that came over and the small populations that are there still. Overall, though, I am very excited about the White Sands discovery. And yeah, personally, I think that it's time to rethink the entire ball of wax. Incidentally, DNA is saying that too. DNA studies on the mitochondrial side are now suggesting from, I think it's A&M University, that there might have been an earlier migration of somewhere around 35,000 years ago, and maybe even one at 60. So, yeah, it's exciting. We have a paradigm shift happening before our eyes. Question number 4 from John Thompson. Hello, Ed. I've been reading Miller and O'Neill's book, Maya Art and Architecture. The chapter Building the Maya World was fascinating because I learned that the Maya would build a new structure on top of an older one rather than destroying the older building and starting afresh. Sometimes the result was like one of those Russian dolls with several structures contained within larger ones. My question is, do you know of any other culture that used the same building technique? Well, that's a neat question, John. Let's get to it. Okay, well, I had to think about this one for a little while. I thought, and I think the answer is no. No other culture area except Mesoamerica. So I will count, the Zapotecs, the Aztecs, all those guys. Famously, the Aztec temple of the Temple Mayor in Mexico City was many, many layers. At least 9, more than that. So this Russian doll thing is really neat. Now, it might be occurring in China. I don't know a lot about Chinese archaeology. In fact, a lot of us don't know much about Chinese archaeology because they're very closed-lipped about it. But other than that, which I feel like is also an ancestor worship place, so perhaps they'd be doing it too, I know of no other culture area in the world that makes these kind of Russian doll temples. And the reason the Maya made them, at least our theory is, that they're really their ancestor worship folks. So when they encapsulate the tomb of an ancestor that they're going to connect with inside a temple that they've now built over, it becomes kind of the touch point, the supernatural telephone to the other world, specifically to connect to the spirit of the person buried inside. So there was a reason behind this, that they were connecting themselves to the deceased members of their dynasty. Every time they did it, the connection between the living and the dead became stronger. Question number 5 is from Greg Toothaker, and actually he asks a similar question. He says, I'm curious if you've posted any materials or thoughts about the 23,000-year-old footprints and embedded seeds found in the white sand several years ago and recently dated. I believe you theorized that humans have been living in the Americas longer than currently accepted dates that are now challenged by tangible facts. If you haven't published anything, how does this fit into the puzzle of human migration in the Americas? Good question. And the answer really is contained in my answer to William Tucker. So please check that out. 6th and final question is from Daphne Bell, and she writes, Hi Ed, great stories. What an amazing badass dude. You mentioned that one of his sons, Alfonso, became an archaeologist. I'm curious, does he do work at Palenque today? Can you share a little bit more about him? I agree with you. I'd love to read a bio of Moises. It would be fantastic. Thank you, Daphne Bell. And thank you, Daphne Bell. Let me answer that. Yes, Alfonso is still currently in Palenque, though he's traveled around over the years. I saw him in June in Palenque, so I know at least as of then he was there. He did many years of very important work at Palenque. He found a tomb in Temple 22. He excavated Temple 21. He excavated the Temple of the Cross. He really did excellent work there. And because of weird INA political things, he ended up deciding the whole thing was a big hassle. He moved to Yucatan. Lately, he's been back in Palenque, so he's around. And actually, you wouldn't believe all the things that Alfonso's part of. He deserves his own bio and things. I would tell stories on Alfonso, but he would probably find me and kill me. He is a very mysterious person sometimes. He has business cards that just say his name and mercenary, and he'll write whatever information he wants to give you on the card if he chooses to give you a card. So he's actually, a chip off the old block of Moises. Wonderful guy. I love Alfonso, and hi, Alfonso, if you ever get a chance to listen to this. I'm not telling any stories on you. Don't kill me. Thank you very much. Okay, so that's a wrap on Ask Ed number 2. I'm really enjoying doing this. I'm learning a lot. Check this out. I can make videos now. I never was able to do that before. I enjoy new challenges, and this is fun to me. Thanks for your questions. We got double the questions this time. Maybe I'll get double the viewership. Last time, 7 of you looked at this. Maybe I'll get to 14. Anyway, it's a growth process. I'm enjoying it. And thanks for listening. I guess I'll talk to you next month. This is Ed, signing off.